Much Ado About Pricing Guns. The day was 18 degrees outside, but it was sunny when I left, and it felt warm. Made my way via bus and train to Housing Works. When I got to Housing Works, I didn't really have enough time to shop for myself, so I hung up my coat in the back, made my way to the front. I asked the skinny guy, his name is Sam, what I should be doing, and he asked me, had I ever done pricing before, and I said no. I said, well, you want to start? So I said fine. So behind the desk, he took out a couple of guides for me and tried to explain basically how we go through pricing. Pricing revolves around this red pricing gun, which has these two rotary things on it that you can adjust, and it makes these clicking noises. The code, the date is on the top one, and the bottom one has the actual price. You can do any sort of adjustments that you need, kind of like combination lock, to get it to whatever settings you need to be in, and then click it, take the little price tag, and stick it on the back of the book. Just making sure that you don't cover the the coding on the back, so that the scanners can pick that up, just in case there's any need to do any lookup. Now, they put these boxes behind the main desk where they do the checkout. And certain boxes do certain things. If a box comes in of proofs, for instance, they're always automatically going to be $3. And you know they're proofs because they don't have those scanned codes on the back, those barcodes on the back. And they'll say not for sale, or advanced copy, and we get a number of those. Now, if they're another type of book, there's different things you do for paperbacks and for hardcovers. For paperback, you automatically just take half off the price, find out what type of code you think this book goes for, and I'll get into that in a bit. Stick it and put it on the shelf. Now, when we put the books on the back shelf behind the checkout shelf, we align them by code: the zeros, the ones, the 200s, the 300s, and so on. Just so when people come in to grab the books to do the shelving, they'll know they're grabbing a whole stack of 4s or 5s or whatever. Now, this is, unless of course these books are fiction, where we have so many, that code is 317, and those books are actually underneath. There's a bunch of stacks down there. So when you're out there and you're doing the pricing, if it's a hardcover book, you go by the year that the book was. And if it's a 2008 or more recent 2009 hardcover, it's automatically 50% off. And then you do your throw that in the gun, find out what you think the book is, and then stick it, put it over where it needs to go on the back shelf. Now, if it's less than that, then there's a sort of descending scale. If it's not a recent book, it's like a 2006 and below. You look at the price, and then if the range is between 25 and under, there's a certain grouping for that. That's usually around 6 to 8. If it's between 26 and 30, that's between 8 and 10. And if it's more than that, the scale's kind of between like 10 and 15, or sort of positive 30s. And it's really discretionary. Now, that's the whole thing. I didn't even realize that. The whole process is extremely discretionary. You're basically a god when you have a pricing gun in your hand. I mean, you ask the people around you what they think the book should go under, whether it's a travel guide, and it seems like that's pretty self-specific by the coding, but some of the codes are pretty nebulous. Like, art is just like everything. Drama is just like everything. I mean, that encompasses everything to do with drama. Whether it's just learning about acting or learning about how to do stagecraft, it's all underneath drama, and everything in between. Some of them are more specific, but the general ones leave a lot of mystery. So it's very easy to have a book and put it on the wrong shelf, because it's really an arbitrary decision that people behind the back are sort of making all the time. And the same thing goes with these prices. I mean, if I'm looking at these prices and I make the decision whether this is a $25 book, if it's going to be $6 or it's going to be for $8. or anywhere in between. We round out usually. I mean, you can do the 50s, but if it's a 695, it's a 7. If it's 705, it's back to a 7.2, just to keep things easier. But you get to choose it when that gun's in your hand. Any price can go. You know, if it's a $4 book or a $2 book, or based upon condition. If the books don't have a price on them, and this is the previous price, the list price the book was supposed to be sold at originally. Then it goes in a separate stack on the front, near where the checkout desk is. Because there's 2 desks. There's a channel where you can walk through, and then 2 sort of desks, and you sort of work in between these desks. They're not really like desks; they're long counters. And it goes on this front counter, and someone sort of goes in there to sort of do a little bit more research on the book. Now, sometimes you'll find a book that someone's recently researched, and they'll put a post-it note on it, which has the price, and sometimes, which is even better, they'll put the coding on there, so you don't even have to look it up or even have any decisions. They've made that decision, and you can just adjust your gun and fire away. I got to know a few more people. I had met a girl named Margaret and a guy named Clay in the front. I was working with them as well as with Sam. I went in the back and went in the cafe, and I met Kevin. He's the guy that usually gives me my tea. I got a shot of him on the last tour that I did, and Catherine, and I think the other girl's name is Margaret or Megan. It's more people, so that this, it's more rounded. There was also going to be a comedy show there, so they were actually going to close the bookstore at 7:30 to get ready for everything for sound check, and then open up the show was at 8:30 and open up around 8:15. A number of interesting things at that bookstore. It's quite an interesting place. But back to Pricing Gun. And you can do whatever you want. I mean, you're out there, you're clicking away, you're firing these things up. And those Pricing Guns, let me tell you, these things, everything in that place is really antiquated in some ways. And it makes it more wholesome, I think. And everything's very worn, but in a very positive way. What I mean by that is, look, if someone comes in looking for a specific book, there's no computer system we as volunteers have access to. No database of the books upstairs. There's a database of the books downstairs in the Internet Sales Department. It's much more difficult to find out where books are up here. It's very mom and poppy in some ways. Another thing, too, is these Pricing Guns, I don't know how old they were. They didn't look like they were new at all. And they were prone to failure. I mean, if there was anything that was limiting us getting through the stacks of books that they bring over from this submission counter after they looked them over and decided, that they were ready to come to us, or whether or not they need to go downstairs or not to Internet Sales. And they would constantly if we would bring a box and finish it, they would bring more boxes up to the front. There was never a way they would ever been able to get through the submissions. I don't know how many days it would take. It's just endless. But these guns, I mean, they'll run. It wasn't just something simple like they'd run out of the little sticky stuff and need to, get changed. That'll happen. One of my guns ran out of ink. A lot of times, they would just jam up all the time. And they would jam up at the most inopportune moments. And you'd sit there and then have to be fiddling with the guns or getting the phone or doing a checkout. It would totally limit you. I had no idea that the actual amount of books that you could possibly shelve in any amount of time was totally limited to the viability of those Pricing Guns. They were, whether or not we succeeded or failed at any given moment, was only due to how functional these Pricing Guns were. There were 3 of them. And I think I just had like the worst touch, like the inverse Midas touch on these things. I would pick it up and it would just like turn to dust in my fingertips. It would just jam up on me constantly. If you get one to work, it was just like, oh, happy day. This thing's actually going to be functional. But the thing is, though, even with dealing with that and doing this, it's much, much better to be doing that than to be doing anything else. Time flies when you're up front. And yet again, another day at Housing Works, which was very easy on the eyes. Always a good place to meet beautiful women. I suggest you all give it a go.